Hi, it's Diane with SewBatik, and I'm here today to show you the Nittany top. It's by Itch to Stitch, and you can find all of her patterns on her website, itchtostitch.com. And they're all downloadable patterns. And I made mine out of our batik rayon. The pattern is written for wovens, and this is the design that we call Violetta. And it is in cotton candy. It's a light summery color, and I really love how this top turned out. It has a shapely hemline. You can either wear it belted or open. It has tucks at the top, and it also has an optional keyhole for an added detail. But I really love it, and I hope you do too. And what I'm going to do today is take you through a few of the things that you should know about this pattern, and just some nuances, to be honest with you, that I really want to share. I'm not going to take you through the construction process of each and every portion, but I am going to talk about some of the fun things like the neckline and show you what I did. And I'm going to make another garment for my sister. So let's get started. The first thing, of course, that you have to do when you buy a downloadable pattern is download it and decide how you want to work with the pattern. The instructions are print them on an 8 by 10 inch home printer. And then there's the pattern pieces. I actually do print them. I print them on our printer and I tape them together. So this is what it looks like when you tape them together. The instructions that she provides on her patterns tells you exactly which pieces of paper to print based off of your size and your style of what you're making with the garment. You can also do the same thing and have it printed at a local print shop. Both instruction sets are provided in your download. So either way, it works just perfectly. But I do print them, I cut them, I tape them together with each one of the marks that tells you how to put it together straight. And then I use our Swedish tracing paper to trace the proper size for myself. I actually never cut this pattern because you never know when your body changes or you want to make a garment for somebody else. Like me and my sister are not the same size. And so I have made one set of these for myself, and I'm going to make another set for her. And it just makes it personalized. So my problem is that I'm probably going to make this. She's going to want more, but at least I can start with a pattern piece that's already been cut out to her size. So here's what we do. Take your Swedish tracing paper. I save every little bit. It's actually kind of funny what I do. But you never know when you only need a small piece as well. And lay it across your pattern pieces to get the best yield out of your paper. And then you just find your size on each one of the line references that's provided on the pattern and start tracing. I'm going to get going with this and I'll be right back. Hi, now we should all be done tracing the pieces for the Nittany top in the size that you require, okay? And there's 5 pattern pieces. There's the front, the back, there's a lining piece, and the sleeve and the back neck facing, okay? I want to show you something though. One thing to always remember when you do trace onto, whether it be tracing paper, tissue paper, whatever happens to be your favorite trace, make sure you get all the lines, because it's really important to be able to transfer. For example, this particular top has a keyhole in it, so we want to make sure we have that position. And this is the center front fold. So that's why the keyhole is right here. And then each one of the tuck marks is going to be right there. So we know how we're going to fold these over and make our pleats, okay? Each one of the markings to match up our sleeve to the front of the shirt and the side as well. So make sure you get everything written down on your tracing paper, okay? Now, they do curl, but you work through it pretty quickly. I have already put my fabric on the table, and the fabric that I'm using for Darla's top is, it's our it's Lady May. Gotta remember my names here. This is called Lady May, and it's the color of Lake. And she really loves really royal colors, and I think she will really, really, really love this top. It is directional. So I want to make sure that everything is laid in the right direction. And the first pattern piece I put on is always one that has a center fold, whether it be the front or the back, because I want to make the best use of the fabric as possible. So I always start with one that's on the fold. So I've already folded the fabric on the table to only use a portion of it. So I have folded only as much as is needed for the width of the front of the garment. I don't fold it in half like you would if you were going to cut strips from 45-inch wide cotton to make a quilt. Just so you can, I say that a lot on these tutorials, but I really want to make sure that you're saving on your fabric. So we're going to lay this out here and use pins or pattern weights, whichever you prefer. But I really like these new pins that I have, and they are wonderful. But you lay all this out, pin them down, and I'm just tacking this on ever so gingerly here, just to make sure you get the positioning of your pattern pieces. The next piece I'm going to lay out is, and I'm going to set this down just a little bit, is the center back, okay? And that again will be on the fold. So we want to make sure that we have just enough to cover the back of our garment. And I'm just going to put a couple of pins in here to tack this down as well. Now, I will tell you that I will have to cut these out in order to get any more space for the lining, which is right behind. I'm going to describe this to you. Right behind this front fabric that I have is a lining, and it is what the dart for the bust is in the lining piece. It is not in the outer layer of the Nittany top. So inside you will have the dart, and it's a little longer lining, but you finish it very, very simply with either a serged edge, or you can turn it up a 1/4 inch and then a 1/4 inch again and just do a finished top stitch to it. So either way, but the lining is what has your dart in it, okay? So that also needs to be on the center fold, and we need to make sure that we have our keyhole marking in it as well, okay? But I'm gonna hold off on that for a moment, and then the sleeve itself is, it's a very short sleeve, so if you would like to lengthen that, you can do that as well. But what I do with the sleeve is I'm gonna use the side that you can't even see on the camera, sorry about that, but the other side that is not folded has enough fabric for me to fold it this way and lay my sleeve out. And then the neck band that goes behind has to be a bias. And so we're going to cut one of these positioned at an angle following your grain line, okay? So let's finish laying these out and cut it all out, and we'll be right back. Okay, everything is all cut out, and we have a couple of steps to do before we can jump back into the instructions and start the garment assembly. One thing that I really can't stress enough is, and I'm sure you all know this, but make sure that you have clipped everywhere that there is a marking, specifically the sleeves. And I always mark the center front and the center back, because when you're putting a facing on, sometimes it's really simple to go by that center back when you're trying to match up seams and bias strips as well. So make sure that you do that. And we want to make sure that we always mark the bust area or anything else that needs marking. And this one will definitely need the pleats on the front of the garment. We want to make sure that that's marked, and the keyhole. I am not going to put the keyhole in my sister's top, but I'm going to show you what you have to do to do the keyhole and to add that little beautiful detail actually to the top. But for now, what I do when I mark my memory lines is what I call them, is I use a white pencil, or if red or black or blue is what you need, then pick the right color. But I'm using a white one right now, and always work on the wrong side unless it tells you otherwise. But I open it up and, well, let me step back. Every single pattern piece, and when you're working with batiks specifically, I always want to make sure that I'm marking the right and wrong side, or the front and the back of the fabric itself. They're very, very close in look and in color intensity, but sometimes if it's off just a little bit and you have a sleeve that's lighter than the other one, you're gonna not like that. So I always try to look at each fabric. I select my preference of side, and I mark the pattern pieces when I cut them with a pin. So the top of the fabric, or the right side of the fabric, is always marked with a pin. So I'll peel back the pins from each pattern piece, and then I put a pin in that right side. So I've done that here on each one of the pattern pieces. This is the front lining that goes underneath the front piece of this top, okay? And that is what has the dart in it. So what I'll do is I'll take and I'll peel back the top of the fabric, or one side of the fabric anyway. I reposition the pattern piece back down on the cut lines. And with the dart, it's really easy because you can fold the Swedish tracing paper very easily along that line, and just simply use your pencil and guide it right along the edge of that line. And then I very carefully flip the other side as well. Make a slight crease in that Swedish tracing paper. And then I trace along that edge, recording where I need to put that dart. Okay. My goal is to just not move the fabric so much. And I also slide this over, since I have a straight edge right here, and I do make a line along that fold down the center of the dart. Just makes it easier to make sure that I am equidistant between each portion of the dart. I'll take my pattern piece, flip it over, pull that back, and then do the same thing on this side. So that's what I do with each one of the pleats or tucks or darts or anything that's needed to mark your garment. Okay, finish that one up later. So the front of the garment has tucks or pleats. So please mark those and mark your center front. That's a very, very important piece on this particular garment. There's nothing really necessary on the sleeve. Everything else is very straightforward. Now, with all of this done, then we start making the garment. And I have to say that with this particular garment, it has a, what do you call it, a shirt tail, front and back to it. And so it's not straight across. And the reason I'm kind of talking about this for now is one of the first things I do is I want to make sure how the pattern is constructed, because it impacts where I use my serger to sew a seam or to just finish the edge of a seam. And this is one of those spots where you have an uneven join of a woven fabric, where I like to make sure that I can have an open seam. And that requires a different construction for me. I just like to then edge stitch along each piece or each edge of my garment piece down the side seams using a 3-thread or a 4-thread overlock, and that finishes the edge of the seam. I only do that to the sides of this particular garment because I know I want an open seam that lays flat when I get that far. So the first thing I do is think about how I want to finish any edges before I start the garment construction. And that includes the edge of my sleeve as well. So the bottom edge, I like to do a 4-thread overlock, and I use that and I turn it in and do a simple top stitch to hem my sleeve edges. You can also use the other techniques that you enjoy. One of them, and is what is in the itch to stitch pattern, is fold it a 1/4 inch, press, fold it another 1/4 inch, and top stitch. It makes it very nice. It secures your threads and edges into your hem. Looks beautiful. So it's just whatever you prefer as to what you would like to do to start your garment construction. So I kind of finish all my edges first, and then I go back and I start to put the garment together. So my next step is to do some finishing, which I'm going to take some time to do to get everything ready to start putting together the garment top. So we're going to come back and I'm going to have those edges done. And I just really want to focus on how the layout of the front of this fun Nittany top works for you, so that you can kind of get a feel for it and how the keyhole is put in. It's really clever and it's really simple and you'll really enjoy it. So we'll be back in a little bit to show you that. You take care. Okay, so we are back, and what I've done so far is just prepped the pattern pieces. And what that includes is the stay stitch around the lining. I've also sewn each dart in the lining. And I've also finished off the seams using a 4-thread overlock on both sides and the hem. You don't need a serger for this, but that is what I do, and it just helps to finish off the garment and get it ready for piecing the next one together. I've also done the same thing on the back piece, stay stitch the neckline, and then I've also finished the seams on each side seam. I haven't done anything yet with the hem or anything like that. That I'll do once I have everything constructed. This is the pattern front, okay? And so I have finished the side seams, and I just simply marked each one of the center front pleats. And then right now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what the next step is in constructing the front facing of the garment. We need our iron and an ironing board and the ability to read this pattern. No, basically what we have to do is, as you can see from my top, we have to create the tucks, or I guess I should call them pleats. But basically what we need to do, following her instructions, is from right to left, we're going to fold and press the pleats in the right sequence. So starting from the outside right, we're folding wrong sides together. By the way, I have the fabric facing right side up. And we're going to press right along that pleat, and I just do it right up at the top, okay, to secure it. Then I'm going to open that back up, and the next pleat is right sides together. And again, we're going to just hold gently, put a little steam in there so that we have a crease. We're going to skip the third one. We're going to use that one later. And we're going to jump over to M. M is wrong sides together. So I'm going to flip this back. And you might be guessing, yes, I did this previously, so it has its creases for me. But this is really how you do it. And the last one that we're going to press, I believe it's P, and it's right next to this one. And it's going to be right sides together. So it's right next to the M. And again, all this is illustrated in the pattern. So you have a very easy guide to follow, okay? Now, once you have the right side of your garment all nicely pressed and creased, we're going to do the same thing to the other side, okay? Now, I'm going to set this aside, but one thing I want to just sort of describe for you the keyhole, okay, for just a brief moment. I'm not putting it in Darla's garment, but I want to talk about it just a minute, because it isn't as tricky as you think it might be, okay? But with right sides together, we're going to lay, okay, right sides together. I also find the importance of making a center fold snip here, because the lining center and the fabric top should match up perfectly. What you're going to do, pin where you feel comfortable pinning, and what I did is I did pin a couple places around it. And then you're going to follow your marking of the keyhole. You're going to stitch that complete keyhole all the way around. And then you're going to use a very sharp, I think I have it over here, a very sharp scissor, and open up that keyhole, and you'll end up with a circle. And at the very bottom edge where it curves, snip, create little snips about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch apart. Do not stitch through or snip through the stitching at all, but we're trying to make it so that when you flip the fabric inside out, that it has a nice smooth edge to the keyhole, okay? And then you'll also, where the top of the keyhole is, you'll snip each corner like you would if you were doing a facing that you flipped inside out, okay? Similar steps right there, okay? So that is how you make the keyhole. I think that the difficulty in it, to me, is making sure everything is lined up properly, and you know that it will be right in center, okay? But also remember one thing, even if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. Look at these pleats. They cover anything, and it really just adds a little bit of spice to it too, okay? The next thing we're going to do is, thinking whether or not you have the keyhole in or not, is to attach the lining to the front collar edge of the top, I have such a hard time with this lining. I don't know why. I can't say it the right way. But anyway, the lining, we're going to attach the two front pieces. Okay? Okay. Now, I'm proceeding without a keyhole in here. Remember that now. So I'm just going to set the lining aside, and we're going to recreate the top edge with the pleats. Get your pins ready. We're going to pull the first pleat over as it was pressed, and you can kind of see how the curve of the collar starts taking shape. Then we're going to take M, the next one, and remember this little notch, the CFN, we're going to pull that over so that it lines up with the center front. And place a pin right there. I'm going to put that a little bit lower, and you'll see why. The next step is to do the exact same thing on the left side of the garment, pulling the first pleat in and putting a pin there. And then we're going to take M, going to keep this going along with us here, and match the center front notch, the CFN, with the center front of the garment. And this, what you want to do is just make sure that you're matching it up. And you will, because the center front notch from the right side is on the top. So you'll be able to match that up. Actually, I'm going to go back one more time. Pull that over and put a pin right in the top of that notch. And as you can see, we have two pleats, and then the center one is crossed, okay? So if you had the keyhole, it would show right below here. So the next step that we have is to baste along the top neckline right here to keep the pleats in place so that it makes it easier for us to sew the lining to the front. Okay, we'll be right back. I just finished basting the top edge of the front collar. Our next step really is to attach the lining to the front of the garment. And what we're going to do is line up the center front notch and the curve all the way along the collar. Go to your sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam. Then come back and baste the entire lining to the front of the garment. Follow the lining all the way up and around the sleeve and across the shoulder. We want to secure it to be almost like one piece of fabric before we attach the back and the sleeves. Okay, so we'll do that first. The next thing we need to do to prepare the back is, get this in the right direction here, is we need to find our neck facing and add it to the back of the collar, the back neckline, and have that ready so that we can stitch the front of the garment to the back. And then we're going to add the sleeves. So it's really now a traditional process of building your garment from the front to the back and the sleeves, and then we're going to hem everything. So have fun finishing this. I'm going to come back when I get all this done and show you everything, and we'll go through it again. So I hope this has been informative, and we'll be right back. Hi, and we're back. And I spent time finishing the garment. I have a couple things left to do that I think are important to highlight, but I hope you enjoyed making this top. If you haven't yet made it, you definitely should, because it is a very, very stylish summer top that is easy to make and add to your pattern collection and summer garment. And as you can see, kind of in summary, I'm wearing one of the Nittany tops with the keyhole and the pleats across the top. the one that I made during this tutorial is for my sister, and I did not put the keyhole in the middle of it. And so there are a few different steps that you have to take with and without the keyhole detail. So make sure that you read through the pattern instructions to do both of those options as well. But basically all I did was stitched up the sides, and I mentioned this earlier, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not, but I actually serged the edges before I sewed the seam together on the side seams and on the side of the sleeve as well, because I wanted to make sure that the seams were pressed open and that it was easy to fold and hem and top stitch the hem itself and the sleeves. And that worked out beautifully because I really like the detail of the kind of shirt tail curve, and I know she will too. It'll be perfect for her job or for whatever she happens to be doing during the day or the weekend. So I know she's going to love it. But I wanted to also share with you a couple of things that I haven't finished doing. The last thing that I do on any one of my garments is I go back and I press it a little bit. I also look for seams that I did not clip threads, because I normally will clip threads everywhere I go, whether it be quilting or garment sewing, because I like to stay on it. Well, when I'm using a serger, I don't necessarily clip every thread. I wait until I'm done, and any exposed thread edges, I go back and I use fray check. This is going to sound like an infomercial, but bear with me because everybody needs to have this. I go back and I use fray check on the threads. I let it dry and then I clip them. And if they're too short to start with, I just fray check it and make sure that the threads are not going to come apart on any of the serged edges or any of the hem, anything that I just want to make sure that those threads are secure so that when it's washed and used throughout its lifetime, it is maintainable. And the one big thing too is up on the top. I'm actually going to quickly take this garment off the mannequin for a moment. Bear with me. And right up where on the front of the garment, where the front meets the back, you will see that I stitched the seam first to make sure that I was able to meet right at that seam join. This is the one thing that I really paid a lot of attention to. I wanted to make sure that that was perfect because you'll see it on the outside as well as on the inside because it's right close to the edge of the collar, okay, or the neckline. So what I'm going to do here is I stitched that first and then I went back and I serged the edge closed. Now what I want to do, see I still have threads, is I use my fray check and to secure the thread right there. I do leave a little bit here on this specific spot because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those threads, I'm going to curl it around to the back, and I'm going to use a needle and thread to secure that serged edge to the back facing. I'm just going to tack it right at that one spot. And it's worth the time to do that because it's just going to keep everything flat, keep everything nice, and it'll look perfect. So do that on both edges. See, I have a little bit here, a little bit of extra serger thread. I want to make sure that I use the fray check on those edges. And then I'm going to tuck this behind and I'm going to tack that down with just a simple needle and thread. Okay. And if there is extra thread coming out of underneath, then clip it. but it'll really secure that edge and you'll feel really comfortable with how you finish that seam, okay? I did the same thing on the hem. I can't really even see, right. So here's where I took the serger and worked it off the edge of the hem. So again, fray check. And this I'm actually going to clip. I could have worked it underneath inside the hem before I stitched it down, but I did not do that. So you could do either way, but I wanted to make sure that I secure those edges. So never let them go frayed, okay? Without some of the fray check. And if you don't have any of this, we do have it on our website, or you can get it at a local retail store or your quilt shop, but definitely buy the fray check. So that is our top. And on our website, I hope she likes it actually, but on our website, we will have this item, and we're going to list it as a pattern that you can click on directly to, and it'll take you to the Itch to Stitch website, and you can purchase your pattern, download it, and make your own Nittany top. And we'll also have our collection of batik rayon for you to select from. I cut and started with 2.5 yards of the fabric for Darla's top and for mine. I did use about 2.25 to 2.5, so it is definitely 2.5. So I'll put that in all that information will be on our item. It's still going to be listed as a fashion duo, even though we're not selling the pattern with the garment this time, or fabric this time. I just want to make sure that you see that you can order the pattern, you can order the fabric, and make your own Nittany top from Itch to Stitch Designs. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and make your own garment and learned a few of my tips along the way. So like this YouTube video, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and sign up for our newsletters, and see us on SewBatik.com. We'll talk to you later. Bye.